Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Bucks took all that trash talk in Game 4 personally, and it showed even without Giannis and Dame. Also, we get you ready for the fastest 2 minutes in sports and which horse to throw a few shekels on. And the Cleveland Browns are in a world of trouble after the draft.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
Milwaukee Bucks played in Milwaukee in Game 5 in a do-or-die situation without Damian Lillard, without Giannis Antetokounmpo, and they played their absolute rear ends off. A 115-92 win over the Indiana Pacers to keep their playoffs alive. And hints during the telecast, Giannis Antetokounmpo could be coming back at some point. Damian Lillard could be coming back at some point. Frank Madden not coming back. He's here with us right now from Locked On Bucks. And Frank, a gutty performance. I don't know other words, I guess, but gutty is the one that comes to mind here. How did the Bucks get this done, especially defensively?
Yeah, I mean they've been playing gutty basketball kind of all series. I think with the exception of the defensive rebounding in the last quarter and OT of Game 3 when they just could not get defensive stops, or they could get defensive stops, they couldn't end possessions. Um, if you're a Bucks fan, you really can't complain about the effort and just the never say die attitude that they've shown. Led by Chris Middleton in particular, who has been the rock throughout this series. Yeah. Obviously, Dame Lillard, a huge first couple of games, but then, it was Chris that had the tremendous Game 3, and he's been the guy that has just been the steady hand, on the wheel here over these past few games, and for him to come out again tonight, 10 quick points. The Pacers get out to an early lead. They started hitting a bunch of threes again. You kind of said, like, man, can they really maintain this level of 3-point shooting? I think they were like 7 of 12 from three early on. But in this game, it actually, like, mean reversion actually did kick in, and this is probably like the one game that we've seen this series where both teams just sort of shot like okay, like neither team shot the lights out or had like a massive advantage from 3-point range. And so, how did the Bucks win by 20 plus points? I mean, I think you obviously start with Chris Middleton, you start with Bobby Portis. I think the patience and, those are two very deliberate half court scorers. And, they were doing a lot of that in this game. And, I thought, again, it was really in the early second quarter. We saw this in Game 1, early second quarter, with Bobby Portis as the only big and Chris out there. That was when the tide was flipped in Game 1, and it was the same story here. They turn a 31-23 deficit into not a big halftime lead, but really steady things. And, Bobby, Chris Middleton, Pat Beverly also, who, I think just was a massive spark plug tonight in that first half, scored 12 points in the second quarter. And, he just sort of like looked at the Pacers guards and just said, I'm just going to burrow my way to the basket, and hit a couple of two smalls while he was at it. So I think a lot of it was just sort of like, controlling tempo and just, it's so important for the Bucks to score and not have droughts, because when they have droughts, that is when the Pacers feast. That's when they can get out in transition. And, we've seen it all year between these two teams. When the Pacers are able to push the ball and play their style, that is when the Bucks are in deep, deep trouble. And tonight, the Bucks, I think, did a really nice job just controlling the tempo a bit. They didn't have, huge issues on the glass the way that they did in Game 3, and they actually had a really good night on the offensive glass themselves. So, again, just controlling pace, making some shots, and having at least a little bit of an advantage. I think from a jump shooting perspective is they can't win without that. And then again, Bobby Portis didn't get ejected, scored a bunch of points, and Chris Middleton did Chris Middleton stuff. So, the crowd, I think, was pretty electric there, especially in the second half. And even Malik Beasley, who has, had a very forgettable series thus far, coming in with doubling down on some of his comments in the regular season about, not being afraid of the Indiana Pacers. He had a huge second half, and, Bucks even getting out in transition in that fourth quarter. You knew things were really going the Bucks' way when they were the ones forcing turnovers and getting out runs and dunks in transition. So I think do not expect the same sort of effort or tempo on Thursday in Game 6. But again, Bucks sort of had Mission Impossible, at the start of the day. Now they have maybe mission slightly less impossible, but certainly, pending the health of their two superstars, still a very, very much an uphill battle here.
Yeah, in the second and third quarters in this one, the Bucks outscored the Pacers 64-36 combined, holding the Pacers under 20 in each quarter and scoring over 30 in each quarter. That's how you stretch out a lead, and that is how you keep your season alive. Frank, thanks. Stay up to date on the Milwaukee Bucks all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Bucks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, we give you the horses to keep an eye on in the run for the Roses. Before we do that, we'll look at how the Sixers stayed alive. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard's not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. That's right, the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone, anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Plan countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories in sports without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Knicks had the game won, but couldn't close the deal and then couldn't stop Tyrese Maxey. So the Sixers live to fight another day with the Knicks.
The Sixers were losing that game. They had no business winning that game. Joel Embiid had 9 turnovers in the game. It was bonkers. In the fourth quarter, he's approaching a quadruple-double, and that ain't a good thing when you're talking about potentially 10 turnovers by Joel Embiid. Couldn't get anything going, couldn't do anything right, was coming up short on jump shots going into that fourth quarter, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in the closing seconds of the fourth quarter, Tyrese Maxey rains down a 3 to tie it up and force overtime. Didn't see it coming, was praying for it to happen, and it actually happened. Sixers eliminated. What now? Do you trade Embiid at the end? Is it over for Embiid? Do you tell Embiid he can't play in the playoff or in the Olympics? What happens next? And Tyrese Maxey said, hold on a minute. Not yet.
Even though they made a 3 right at the closing buzzer, the Orlando Magic fell by a point and are on the brink of elimination against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And on the diamond, the Milwaukee Brewers and Tampa Bay Rays cleared the benches, but it was the Brewers that had the last laugh.
Hi, everybody. Chuck Freeman here. Instant reaction. Locked On Brewers as the Brewers win 8-2 over Tampa, snapping that 3-game skid. Once again, drama at AmFam Field with the umpires for a third straight game. This time, Freddie Peralta pitching great into the 6th inning, gave up an earlier home run to Jose Siri, and then on a 3-0 count in the 6th inning, plunks Siri in the thigh. Home plate umpire says, "You're gone." Murphy comes out, argues his point. "You're gone." Weird that Peralta was ejected in this game. No warnings given at all. But the home plate umpire just walked right out and threw Peralta out of the game. Later in the game, a bench-clearing brawl. We'll tell you about all this. The bottom line is the Brewers finally got on track. Willie Adames hit a 3-run blast. And Milwaukee with an 8-2 win. We'll talk to you a little bit later on tonight on Locked On Brewers.
And the LA Angels got some sobering news on their super-duper star. Mike Trout suffered a torn meniscus. The injury to his left knee does not require surgery. Trout has been plagued by injuries in recent seasons, and with the Angels floundering their first season post-Ohtani, hope is fading in Anaheim. General Manager Perry Manassian to his credit, is trying to keep some glimmer of hope alive. He said Trout could possibly return this season. Get your fascinators on, get your julep cups out. It is the 150th running of the Kentucky Derby, which means a lot of fun coming your way. Gabby Gaudet from FanDuel joins us now. And Gabby, this is a really fun time if you are an experienced bettor, if you're an entry-level bettor, if you're just trying to figure out what's going on with the Kentucky Derby, you just want to have some fun and maybe have a whiskey cocktail, another great opportunity. We're having fun here. So as you look at what we have upcoming here, how do you just start trying to handicap this field?
It's a doozy for sure. I mean, I look at horse races throughout the year multiple times a day, obviously. And the Derby is unlike any other race in the world because there's 20 horses in the starting gate. They're going the longest distance they've ever been before to this date. So the Derby is just for 3-year-old horses, and there are no 1.25 mile races prior to this, at least in those Derby prep races, the qualifiers for the Kentucky Derby. So it can be chaos, and then maybe add into the mix years and years past, we've had horrible weather. It's been, a muddy track, and that obviously adds a new layer of difficulty. So you kind of just got to go back to the basics and trust your gut. Obviously, there have been people in the past that I've talked to, and they pick the best name that they like, or their favorite numbers, or maybe they had a dream about numbers and then they met those numbers. And look, that's probably just as lucrative as me spending 5 hours handicapping the race, because at the end of the day it is a lot about luck, but hopefully we have an informed decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the field, this is like a particularly strong field name. Like I feel like the Anna Marie, Teo Password, Track Phantom, like there's some good names in this race. If you want to pick some horses based on actual pedigree and who has the most likely odds to win, we do have a favorite. Sierra Leone is the favorite in this one, but where are you looking here?
I actually like Fierceness. So I was going.
Sorry, 5-1. Fierceness is the favorite at 5-1. You're right.
Yeah, Fierceness and Sierra Leone, they're going to be your two favorites in the race. And for me, it's one of those years. Sometimes in years past, I look at the race and I'm like, oh, we could try to get around these favorites. But these two favorites, from a talent standpoint, they just are faster than the rest of the field. Fierceness is the fastest horse in the field. He is just a little inconsistent. He's lost twice in his career, and in those two losses, he didn't get out of the starting gate. And you have to get out of the starting gate in the Kentucky Derby, otherwise you just have no shot. And so that's kind of the obstacle for him to overcome. And for Sierra Leone, his running style, he comes from the clouds. He has no early speed. So he's going to drop back towards the back of the pack and have to weave his way through 19 other horses in order to win. And with his post position, he's post position too. So down on the inside, it's not going to make it easy for him. So both of these favorites, they have things to overcome. It's not as cut and dry as, okay, he's the fastest horse, he's going to win. You still need a lot of luck to go in your way. So that's why I'm going with Fierceness, because he's just going to, I think, be able to stay out of trouble because of his speed. He's going to be, forward running, and he gets Hall of Famer Johnny Velasquez, who's won this race a couple times before in the past.
We see these two, call them favorite 1A, 1B co-favorites if you want to. No one else has shorter than 8-1 odds in this race. Would you be looking at trying to play both these horses outright? Would you be looking to put them together in some way? Like, what do you think is the most efficient way to bet these horses?
So every Derby, I set aside some money and I play a superfecta. So a superfecta is to pick the top 4 horses in the correct order. Now, you don't just have to use 4 horses. You can use unlimited horses. Obviously, that's going to increase your wager. But I will probably use Fierceness on top in the win column. And then I'm going to get creative underneath it. And if I can maybe beat Sierra Leone, although he is a very nice horse, I think he's going to have traffic troubles. So I'm going to get kind of wild with the other horses in the superfecta. I really like Stronghold in there. he won the Santa Anita Derby, which has also been one of the most successful prep races for the Kentucky Derby. I might use Catalytic because Catalytic, he comes out of the Florida Derby, the race in which Fierceness won. That race has been, if you're looking at Derby prep races, the Santa Anita Derby and the Florida Derby have been the most successful prep races for the Kentucky Derby. And then beyond that, maybe Domestic Product, I'll probably throw in there. The other Chad Brown runner, he also sends out Sierra Leone. So that's kind of the feeling for me, is that I'm going to build everything around Fierceness. He's my strongest opinion. If he loses, I'm in a bad spot, but I'll just throw in, big long shots underneath of him in that superfecta.
I love it. Gabby, I appreciate the time. Enjoy the Derby, and we will hopefully talk to you again soon. Maybe we'll get a chance at a triple crown and we can have some fun here.
All right. Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
Keep in the know on how to make the most of your wager by subscribing to Locked On Sports today on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Cleveland Browns are in trouble after a lackluster draft. I've got another wager for you over at FanDuel, and you're going to want to pay attention to this one. Of course, if you're a new user, you can get $150 in bonus bets no matter what, but you're going to want to hear about this. Tonight, the Celtics go for the clincher against the Heat. While I don't necessarily think the Heat are going to extend the series another game, I do think there's an opportunity with Miami. Boston is favored by 14 points, according to FanDuel. The loss of Kristaps Porzingis may help the Heat more than they're getting credit for here. Not to the point of an upset, but I like Miami to cover that 14 points. You can also check out all the lines on the rest of the NBA and NHL playoffs, whether they be money lines, who you think is going to win, or point spreads or puck lines. FanDuel has it all. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book for myriad reasons, but chief among them is how they treat new users. Start using FanDuel today and you can get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Just head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon for $150 in bonus bets, whether your first bet wins or loses. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book and the official sports book of Locked On. After losing their first-round draft pick in this draft to the Deshaun Watson trade, the Browns needed to do their future building with their second and third-round picks. As Locked On NFL host Chris Carter tells his co-host James Rapine, the Browns had a bad draft after reaching on both of those picks.
I think the Cleveland Browns are in a world of trouble.
Wow.
Listen, I liked Michael Hall as a
Wow.
in this class, but not in the second round. I thought he was a third round pick at best. And this is a Browns team that, like, they traded away all their picks to get Deshaun Watson years ago. And so now they're kind of dealing with that. They didn't have a first round pick, but this second round pick, they had some opportunities to go get a guy. It was going to be a difference maker. And to me, Michael Hall Jr. was a guy you probably could have waited till the third round and got. And then third round, you get Zach Zinter, guard out of Michigan. Again, decent player, but I valued quite a few players over those guys. And to me, I just felt like you didn't have a first round pick. You got guys who above the value. Like, I had Michael Hall Jr. as my 75th best player. They picked him 54th overall. Zach Zinter wasn't even in my top 100. They got him 85th. So I looked at that and I said, man, like that's a hard sell for me. And this is back-to-back years where I'm not really impressed by the Browns draft class. I think that this team, they're going to need the dudes that have been carrying this team to, getting into the playoffs to keep carrying them, because I don't see a lot of young talent rising up for this team and making a difference soon. They just re-signed or got a 5th-year extension for Greg Newsome. They're going to need everybody who's been a veteran for the team to somehow improve a lot, because I don't see a lot of rookie help or even last year's rookies helping to make a big difference for this upcoming year for the Browns.
The margin for error in Cleveland is smaller. It just is, because they traded all of what they traded, multiple first-round picks for Deshaun Watson, then gave him the biggest contract with the most guaranteed money in NFL history. And he has not played anywhere near that level. And that's forgetting about the grossness of the allegations that he faces and has faced. This was, and looks like it's going to go down as, one of the worst moves in modern NFL history. And the Browns are only making it worse by not doing all the little things on the margins that you have to do when a move like this does not go the way that you planned. If Deshaun Watson were just like a fine, passable Ryan Tannehill level quarterback, that would be one thing. But he's been worse than that. And now, because of the money being allocated, you have to hit in all of these other little ways. You had to be perfect. You traded for a guy who is going to make your life easier as a franchise, to be that franchise quarterback, and he has not been. And that makes your life harder. And the rest of that test is up to the Browns, and so far, not exactly passing with flying colors. And finally, baseball may start with the letter B, but the start of baseball games can sometimes be delayed because of bees. The Arizona Diamondbacks found that out as a bunch of bees had built a colony on the protective netting behind home plate on Tuesday. The bees had swarmed some 30 feet above the field and caused quite the buzz across social media. I'm so sorry. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports today, will the Celtics finish off the Heat? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.